Yesterday, 4th of July, they had a protest in Mexico against American migrants, and it turned violent where they start attacking American businesses.
African Americans are not the reason why Mexico is experiencing a gentrification crisis.
Don't get me wrong. The United States of America is still the land of opportunity. Many people would love to become American citizens and take advantage of everything that America has to offer. But while many people want to come to America, there are many people who are Americans who want to live other places. And the reason why that's the case is because America has gotten expensive. If you can hold on to the United States dollar and it follows you, you can live a quality of life at about a fraction of the cost. Let's say if you live in Colombia or Thailand, everything is almost like 75% off. I used to live in Poland, and that is absolutely true. The health care in these countries, it's almost as good as America at almost half the price. And then your quality of life is better. But while we're moving to these places, do we ever think about what the locals are going through? Many Americans, especially Black Americans, are looking for opportunities abroad. Many are looking to escape the racism that they felt in America. And one of the new places they're going to is Mexico.
You know what, the truth of the matter is, I felt my safest self. And safe is relative, but I mean safe to be my authentic self, safe to express myself in the way that I really desire to express myself. That feeling of safeness, I've only felt outside of the United States. And me living in Mexico as an African American woman, I've never felt discrimination from the Mexican people. When I have felt discrimination, it's been from Americans.
Let's take this lady for an example. She's a family of 4 and they're enjoying their time in Mexico. Everything is getting better for them. Even look at the comment here. Somebody says, Mexico, is it cheap to live there? Travel Queen, the poster of that video, says way cheaper than the USA. Damn. And while this lady is able to live and work at America and earn US dollars, on the flip side, Mexicans that are in Mexico are facing hardships. And it's not just Black Americans, because many Americans are there, but I'm just focusing on the Black Americans in Mexico. Mexicans are tired of these Americans simply because they're driving the prices up too high. And because the prices are going up so high, this is starting to happen.
Yesterday, 4th of July, they had a protest in Mexico against American migrants, and it turned violent where they start attacking American businesses.
Shout out to my man Donnie on Timeout on TikTok. He's really covering a lot of the legal immigration that's going on in America. And he also talked about this. If you guys don't know, on July 4th, Hispanics in Mexico basically went around tearing up a whole bunch of American businesses. And the reason why that's the case, they blame American expats for coming into the country and basically gentrifying the country. And this is making it very expensive for the local people. This is the same thing that you hear about in Ghana when Black Americans are coming there and local Ghanaians are saying things are starting to become costly. The locals can't get the things they used to do. Yet the people who are building homes and apartment buildings are looking to cater towards, this group of people who are building businesses and doing better. But watch what he says after this.
So their complaints against the American migrants is gentrification. They're draining the resources of Mexico. Here's one. Americans in Mexico should learn Spanish. Americans in Mexico should learn Spanish. Now, when America expressed these same concerns, Americans are the villains, or have phobias. Oh, you shouldn't say that. But when Mexico says this, is long live Mexico, we support Mexico. And if you look at the numbers, there's over 10 million plus Mexican immigrants in the United States. 4 million of them live in Southern California, and a high percentage of them is receiving some form of government assistance. Let's not talk about Medi-Cal, which is Medicaid. That's California versions of Medicaid.
Now, he brings up an interesting point. He's saying, listen, a lot of these Hispanics in Mexico are upset, but these Mexicans that come to America, look at what they're doing. These Mexicans are basically getting a free ride. Some of them are using Medicaid, which is free health insurance, which is using taxpayers. And if you're in California, it's Medi-Cal. And then Mexicans who are there illegally or legally are then taking opportunities from Americans. But then check out this lady who's a Hispanic complaining about Americans living in Mexico.
Gentrification is when you bring money from your country into a different country, you raise up the prices of everything because you're buying top-notch houses, you're building businesses, you're trying to basically push people that have lived in that area out of there because you're making everything too expensive. And at the same time, you're going around complaining about the locals and the culture, people being up too late, making noise near your new condo that you bought in your retirement in Mexico. And I think we're going to see more of this. We're going to see more people in Mexico fighting back, pushing back against people in America, whether they're well-intended or not, coming in and doing so. Because if you're going to go into another country, as you guys like to say, you got to assimilate, you got to learn the culture. But for some reason, Americans think that they're the exception. They could go to these places, make their own areas.
But let's go back to my man Donnie on timeout. What does he say about gentrification?
We want to discuss gentrification. Try finding a place in Los Angeles or Southern California, especially if it's a lot where they're saturated at, where it's predominantly them. Even if you could afford the rent, most likely they're not going to rent to you. And it'd be like 8 to 10 of them living in a 1-bedroom apartment. When in Los Angeles, it's supposed to only be 3 people to a 1-bedroom apartment. If you try to do that as an American, you will get reported. Now, the Americans that live in Mexico, you got to show proof that you're bringing in $2,600, at least $2,600 a month. So you're showing them you're not going to live off their government. If you don't have that, you have to have $43,000 in the bank to even go over there.
Now remember, he says, hey, these Americans that are coming to Mexico, they've done everything right. They have at least $40,000 in their bank account. They're making at least $2,600 a month. And then if you want to talk about gentrification, there are certain neighborhoods that used to be completely black. Like I remember when Compton College was pretty much all black. I went to Compton College, and now Compton College, the last I checked when I was a student, I saw so many Hispanics there. Hispanics are running blacks out of these same places in California, and sometimes they're living like, 10 or 9 in a house. But if that was Black Americans or any other Americans, that would be a problem, right? So we're talking about gentrification. I mean, I used to live on 112th Street in Watts, East 112th Street. And I can tell you then that the Hispanics came in and they basically took over Black Watts. All right. I used to live across the street from Grape Street Elementary School. And that was in the 80s this was happening. And now Mexican stores are everywhere. Can blacks get jobs at these Hispanic shops? Hell to the no. All right. But it's okay for Hispanics to do that. Now, I also want to tell you something else. Not only are Hispanics upset at Americans, are Black Americans who are moving into Mexico, but check this out.
This is what an anti-migrant protest looks like in Mexico. There's anger and waving of Mexican flags and signs like this one, which translates to "No to the invasion." Now a new poll by the Washington Post and the leading Mexican newspaper, Reforma, suggests attitudes in Mexico may have hardened since this protest last November over the arrival of a migrant caravan in Tijuana. 64% of Mexicans, nearly 2/3, say they believe people fleeing Central America into Mexico are a burden that threatens to take jobs and benefits from Mexican citizens. 55% want them deported, versus just 33% who believe Mexico should give them temporary asylum or residency. Just 7% support them settling permanently. So Mexico is seeing some of the same nationalist sentiments that we've seen in the United States and other countries.
Remember the video I did about the Haitian community fighting back against ICE in Brooklyn? Now, Hispanics were like joining forces with Haitians. Oh, we need to take from them and fight back from them. Like, this is crazy. Like, we need to also unite with our Haitians, against ICE. But at the same time, Central Americans who are looking to get into Mexico, they don't want them there. Why? Because they're saying the same thing Americans are saying. They're saying, listen, we can't deal with Central Americans coming and taking jobs from us And over 55% of Mexicans in Mexico don't want Central Americans. These are people who also speak Spanish, people who are culturally similar to them. They want nothing to do with them. And then now for the blacks coming into Mexico, they're understanding this.
So I'm moving to Mexico City in about 8 weeks, and I'm already getting comments from people telling me either not to move there or telling me that I'm contributing to gentrification by relocating. I'm sorry, but I think that is complete and utter bull. African Americans are not the reason why Mexico is experiencing a gentrification crisis, first of all. I think it's really interesting that people expect African Americans specifically to stay in a country where our ancestors were enslaved. I'm a black girl from the South, so I know for a fact that my ancestors were not only enslaved in this country, but they were probably enslaved not very far from where I live. I think black Americans specifically have always been expected to stay and tough it out in a country that has literally taken so much from us. Our current sitting president didn't even acknowledge Juneteenth. And you expect me to either stay in this country or go back to Africa. Insanity. I've been to Mexico and everybody was super kind and super welcoming. There's also black Latinos, there's black Mexicans. So there is a demographic of black folks in the country already. And especially as a black woman, we don't even have the resources to gentrify a country. That's another demographic of people, no shade. And while I will totally be respectful and intentional about my move to Mexico, I do not think it's fair to tell people, especially black folks, that they're not welcome in a country when the original country that they're from treats them like shit.
Now listen to what the sister is saying. She's saying like, wait a minute, I'm coming over to Mexico and you guys are already accusing me of gentrifying the place. Like, hey, listen, I come from a country that's hated on me, but I'm trying to come over there and live my best life and, you're blaming me. What she doesn't understand is Mexicans don't care about that. Even though she's a black American, she's not going to be different. You're an American, just like me, living in Uganda. I'm not considered necessarily African or black here. I'm considered a white person. I'm also considered Muzungu because I represent the lifestyle of somebody in the Western world. And so when a Hispanic or African, and for that matter, sees somebody like me, hey, it's going to be a little bit easier to say, hey, you're a foreigner and you're one of the reasons why things are getting higher for us. But check out this sister who also lives in Mexico.
I completely agree with this statement. People are always wondering if I experienced racism in Mexico, but to be honest, I feel like I observed classism more than anything. Like, I personally haven't had a racist experience, but the classism is real here. It really is. Like, and you can just see the drastic difference between like rich Mexicans and your average everyday working people Mexican. Like, it's so in your face. And I see a lot of rich Mexicans, a lot. And they definitely have like this air of, like.
Now she said something pretty interesting. She says she notices that there's a lot of classism in Mexico and not much racism, but the rich Hispanics, they have this particular aura about them. And that's interesting because a lot of the developers who are rich are catering to who? Other people that have money. You see, here's what we're not talking about in the third world. And I can talk about it from living in Uganda. I was recently in Kenya. These new apartments that people are building, and also Harlem can tell you the same thing. When you look at the prices of these apartments, when you look at what these developers want and the amount of money they want, they're not trying to sell to locals. And the reason why they don't want to sell to locals is because they believe there's no money to be gained by dealing with locals. All right. Everybody's looking to cater towards people who will be working for foreign nationals, bringing business or bringing opportunities, who can pay more taxes to the government. And that's the government's fault. But at the same time, these same Hispanics who don't want anybody else to come in want it to be very difficult for Americans and even black Americans to come there. And see, the reality is, if you're going to protest American brands, then you know what? What if America starts protesting Mexico? And this is the hypocrisy of almost every immigrant that I've come across, whether it's here in Uganda or someplace else. Again, I've been in countless debates with, Ugandans or Rwandese people who have a problem with African Americans getting citizenship in an African country, but they don't have no issue with their people getting citizenship in America. And you wonder why people like this sound hypocritical AF. All right. So guys, what do you think? It's your boy Usher Jackson back at it again. Another episode of The Celebrity Junk. I appreciate you for all you do. Subscribe to the bell. We're out.